Today, we discuss the 2026 rookie class that is taking shape. Who's separating themselves from the pack? Let's break down our rookie tiers and see who's really worth the hype. We've got risers, fallers, and a few names you might not expect. Stick around for all that and more. And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. Very excited to talk 2026 rookie tiers, little strategy at the beginning here too. Before we hop into this, usually I ask you guys how you guys are doing in fantasy, in NFL fantasy, but really, let's just talk a little bit about how 2026 perceptions are changing instead, since really we're not talking, obviously this relates to Dynasty, but we're talking college football. So what's going on? How has your perception of this class shifted since the preseason, guys?
Does that mean you had a bad week, Justin? Is that why we're not talking about it? I'm sorry, but
I don't want to talk about it, bud.
look, this class has been an interesting ride with this one. A lot of the names going into the year disappointed. A lot of unknown guys are establishing themselves. We used to not think there was much talent at the top of the receiver group, and you'll see very, very shortly that we've changed our mind on that. I think it's a fun class. I think it's at least as good, if not better, overall. You're just changing some names, so I'm happy with it. I'm pretty pleased with where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, we thought the quarterback class was going to be really strong, but I still think we might get 2 to 3 quarterbacks that are drafted in the top 5, top 10. So that's really good for quarterback value. And yeah, this wide receiver class, it's outperforming the expectations I had for it, and I kind of think it's getting pretty close to that class of like Marv, Adunze, and Neighbors for me, like 3 really high end guys. I think I prefer that class of prospects slightly more, but I think this class is really close at wide receiver.
And then JP, we do have a couple of guys that were probably tier 1 for us 6 months ago that are not in our tier list right now. Kind of talk us through that for our audience really briefly.
Yeah, so not included in our tiers here is going to be Arch Manning of Texas and Lenore Sellers of South Carolina. It's just that the perception around them has really, really shifted to being 2027 prospects. Sellers maybe comes out this year based on just the athleticism that he has, but the season has not gone the way that we had hoped for both of these guys. And honestly, the talk that I hear just in general is people are also around the league are kind of viewing them as 2027 players as well. So we have shifted, and we will pivot if they declare later in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's never gone wrong for a really athletic quarterback who's shown limited ability as a passer to declare early and then get drafted highly, right? That's never backfired for an NFL team. So, I mean, just as a fantasy fan, I'd love to see Sellers go back to college, get those extra reps, right? Because to be honest with you, you just don't get those reps in the pros, right? Like if you suck for 6 or 7 weeks, you might just get benched, honestly, right? They don't have the patience for you. So I would love to see him return if he doesn't somehow miraculously really turn that around over the remainder of the college football season. So feel free to skip ahead to our tiers if you would like to. We'll have timestamps below, but we want to just talk a little bit about strategy about this is Dynasty Fantasy Football. How are we valuing and what is our perception of these picks, right? Because these are players. You guys know the drill. You draft these rookies later on in the non-point scoring season with your rookie pick. Your rookie picks can also be used to buy players right now. Your rookie picks are also being heavily compared to 27 picks, right? So let's kind of talk about that strategy a little bit. By the way, hit that like, hit that subscribe if you haven't, because 27 rookie mock draft is coming up next week. So that being said, our community question from last week, we have a couple listener responses. How are you valuing 26 picks at this point in the college football season? And JP, can you read our first reply?
First one here is from David Covington. He says, I'm excited about 2026 picks. While it's not necessarily the players I expected to look good there is some solid top and talent. In leagues where I bought 26 picks heavily, I had some 27 envy. But as college football season goes on, I get more and more excited for these picks. And yeah, kind of like we alluded to, the top end of this class, the wide receiver is looking great. We have a high end running back. So I definitely agree, because I mean, it could have gone poorly with the receivers or running backs in this class, but I think we have 2 or 3 really good running backs in this class, 3, 4, 5 wide receivers that could be really good. And also, I honestly really like the tight end class. There's probably 3 guys I think could be really good for fantasy at least.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that perspective of these picks are undervalued. I've been in a lot of negotiations recently where people are asking for 27 picks instead of 26 picks. And I get it. They kind of have more value right now, but come the 26 rookie draft season, when these players are the ones that can be scoring points for you next year, and we're excited about their landing spots and everything, we all know that gap is going to be very heavily shifted right? So I definitely think that is a very silly thing, and I think we'll talk more about that later on, as well as potentially next week. Next community question we have the reply from friend of the show Trav Bob, David Covington, also friend of the show, listener league comrades. Love having you guys here. Crab Bob says, I'm still happy to buy 26 picks if I am not competing and have older assets that are scoring points. If I am competing, I'd love to send a late first and some old vets like Adam. Or if I am competing, I'd love to send a late first for some old vets like Adams, etc. But people aren't biting on that so far. For 26 picks, it's hard on the streets. Still want them, but the class isn't super hype. There's always a surprise or two players, so take your shots. I mean, that might be the going rate on Adams. I think we acknowledged that in our wide receiver tier video that it's a late first, early second, and you might have to pay the late first for him. Probably what a lot of people who have him want. Hard to move these late firsts because there's some players that I think I'm pretty excited about adding to my roster next year, whether it's some running backs that might get a decent landing spot, some quarterback, wide receivers, tight ends that should get good first-ish round draft capital. Like, I think we're going to end up with a 110 being a pretty considered to be like a pick you're mildly excited about in this draft class, 109, 110, something like that. It could change, but it's hard to move these picks for the vets that I think you can get for them because people aren't excited about them. And for that reason, I'm pretty willing to just try to hold them, honestly. See if I can move my 27 second or a crusty vet instead and hold the first because people value that 27 so high. Just kind of a way to maybe take advantage of that strategy of the fact that, yes, people aren't valuing these so much. Then I just want to go ahead. Let's all give a quick little reply to this strategy question as well. David, can you hit this first? How are you valuing these 26 picks right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, on my competing teams, I'm happy to spend them and buy points because I want to win. But when I'm rebuilding, I still prefer 26 to 27 for the most part. Like, I do get it. The 27 class still looks insane. And the more we like about the 26 class, we just keep growing to love the 27 class more and more too. But like you said, Justin, those 27 picks aren't going to be scoring points next year. 26 picks are. So, like, I'm still happy to buy them. And in the discussions that we've had and the responses we've had, it seems to me, and honestly, quite honestly, out there in the streets too, it seems like 26 picks you can kind of get at a discount. Not from everyone and not in every league, but if I can get a 26 first for cheaper than I think I should, I'm happy to buy.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm kind of trying to approach this the same way. There's a few teams I'm looking at doing kind of a mid-season reboot on just because things aren't going that well, where I'd love to try to get some of these 26 picks a little bit cheaper than people have been selling them in previous years. What a mid to random first, because there's still mid to randoms available, would be going for in a previous year. Like, it's just fetching more than your veterans are fetching more in pick value than they would in some other years, I feel like, in 26 picks, but not in 27. Like, a lot of people want those 27. So definitely I'm very interested in trying to accumulate where I can, and I don't value it any differently than I would value next year's rookie pick in any given year, right? They're gold, right? It's a first. Firsts, when it comes to the rookie draft, people are going to go crazy for them. It's cyclical, and we know that they will. Whether or not they're still excited about 27 picks in the future or not, they're players that you can add right then. JP, anything to add on this question for you, or did you kind of go over it earlier?
Yeah, I mostly agree with what you guys are saying there, and I think I pretty much have my thoughts out there for the 2026. It's a pretty good class. Don't discount it.
All right, and then next week's community question: how early do you start tracking future draft class? Do you think it helps or hurts your dynasty decision making? For example, are you already looking at the 28 picks? Are you looking at players that are coming out that year? People hoarded for Marvin Harrison Jr. People hoarded for Bijan Robinson potentially. Like, people tank 2 years in advance sometimes for players.
Jeremiah Smith.
Jeremiah Smith, exactly. Do you personally start tracking future draft classes that early? And do you think it actually helps or hurts your dynasty team's outlooks or dynasty portfolio outlook? So would love to hear your responses in the comments on the YouTube video below at DinoConFF on X. Would love to hear your responses. So all that being said, gonna hop into our tiers. Pretty excited to discuss these tiers where we have these players tiered. Brief housekeeping question I don't actually know the answer to, but it's useful for our audience, boys. Are our tiers going to be based off of 1.75 tight end premium as far as where we have the tight ends? And of course, they're going to be based off of Superflex, right?
Yep,
No
that is
No other additional major scoring note. A couple other things we just want to make sure everybody knows about. As you're looking through our graphics, we have a lot of statistics on the graphic. Feel free to pause it, look over all of them. We're not going to read all of these statistics on there to you guys. Us reading something off of a picture, not super interesting podcasting. So if you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, you should have that video available through any of those different mediums. So feel free to look at all of that. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and have JP, can you go ahead and introduce tier one for us real quick?
Absolutely. Cream of the crop right here. We got Jeremiah Love, who is a fantastic running back prospect, good pass catcher, and a high-end athlete. We have Jordan Tyson, who is kind of the consensus wide receiver one in this class, and I've seen him mocked inside the top 5 of a lot of mock drafts. And then we have OSU, Carnell Tate. What could go wrong with an Ohio State wide receiver? And then we got the player that I'm going to highlight here in Mekhi Lemon. Now, if you look at his size, 5'11", 195, he's not small, but he's not that, that big X wide receiver. He also isn't like a super high-end athlete. But the reason I really, really like Mekhi Lemon is just look around the league at a lot of the players that are winning at a high level. I mean, look at JSN and Buka and Egbuka like now. I mean, these guys are really, really good zone coverage beaters. And that's kind of it's been really good for fantasy too. And we see with X wide receivers, sometimes they can be pretty volatile. Like Drake London, Nico Collins, they can have huge games, but they also sometimes can have a lower weekly floor. I like this archetype of a guy who can be a slot flanker and get a lot of designed looks. He's really, really good after the catch. If you watch him, he's consistently making the first guy miss, and he's even a punt returner too. So that's the kind of ability he has in the open field. He's very versatile. I mean, he's more of a slot guy, 70% slot rate. But I'm glad to see that he is getting some work outside. Sometimes these guys like Egbuka and Justin Jefferson, they see a lot of work in the slot in college and they think they can't do it outside. He's showing that he can win outside a little bit more here. So I really like to see that. From looking at yards per route run, in this class, he's only behind Carnell Tate. And if you see on the graphic, they're very close. Mekhi Lemon has a 3.47 yards per route run. So that is an elite mark right there. And he's on track to have 1,300 plus yards. I think he's a really, really good zone beater, has a great space for zone. He's got a great feel for space. And he actually has really good ball skills. He is a highlight touchdown grab where he high points the ball over a defender. And even at a 5'11", he has that ability. So I really like this player a lot. I think just looking at being an early declare, no injury history, and how good he's been. I mean, he's the leader in college football in receiving yards in the Power 4. So he might be the wide receiver 3 in this class. And I think there's an argument that he could be anywhere between 1 and 3. But phenomenal player. That just illustrates how good this wide receiver class is at the top.
Yeah, I really like Lemon. One thing I like to see is his slot percentage only at 70% roughly. He is a slot player, but that tells me that they can move him around a little bit. Roughly 1 out of every 3 snaps he takes outside. So hopefully in the NFL, that means he'll get on the field in some 2 wide receiver sets. Don't need him out there on obvious rundowns. He's not going to be a great blocker. But if you can be out there in some neutral pass set kind of downs and 2 wide receiver sets, that's great. I want to talk about, shocker, I know, my Ohio State wide receiver, Carnell Tate. As we know, he's been part of a loaded group his whole career. So his first 2 seasons, he saw the field a bit, but he didn't really break out like we'd love a receiver in this echelon to do. Last year, 733 receiving yards. That's still his career high, though he's only 22 yards behind right now. This season, he's really putting it all together. He's increased just about every metric you'd like to see. Yak hasn't really changed much, but he is who he is. He's not really a Yak guy. Thankfully for him, defenses are trying so hard to take away Jeremiah Smith that Carnell Tate's finally being given a chance to shine. Touchdowns up from 4 to 7 last year to this year. PFF offensive grade from 70.1 to 89.8. Yards per route run, 1.9 up to 3.5. So that's from kind of worrisome to kind of elite. Really, that's a huge jump. ADOT from 11.3 to 14. 14 is the second highest ADOT of the group of players we're talking about today. And first downs per route run, stat that we kind of like. It's kind of newer in its popularity, but we really like it. Up from 0.09 to 0.13. And then the other thing we're seeing this year is he's catching these contested catches opportunities. He only caught 10 of 18 in his first 2 years. He's got 12 of 13 this year. Don't love a ton of contested catch opportunities because that means maybe you aren't separating. But he gets compared to Chris Olave a lot. And Chris Olave was known for his route running. Not exactly worried about Tate's route running. Just love to see that he is coming down with those contested catches now. So really putting it together this year. We thought he might do this. But now that he is, we can safely say he's a top end talent in this class.
I want to just touch very briefly on the other 2 players. Gonna ask first, either of you guys can take this one. I've heard Jeremiah Love compared to Ashton Genty as far as the type of prospect that he is, obvious RB1, first round draft capital. I think probably Genty obviously produced more than we're going to see from, Love's numbers aren't quite as video game-ish, but do you guys think there's any credence to that I've heard from some other people in the space?
I don't think he's quite Ashton Genty as a prospect. I don't expect him to go top six, top eight, but I don't think it's gonna be far behind. I mean, they're very different. Genty, like you alluded to, the production was off the charts, missed tackles forced. He just did everything good as a running back. And Love, he's a good receiver and he's a really good athlete, but he hasn't quite shown the ability as a rusher as Ashton Genty, but he has a lot of upside.
And he also doesn't stand like Michael Myers in the backfield. I mean, that's just, obviously a detraction as well against him. And then just looking at the statistics here, Tyson, 2.27 yards per route. That's not bad, but it's a far cry from Tate and Lemon. So, David, very curious here. Is a lot of this just, do you think, chalked up to Arizona, I think, has struggled offensively? Is that kind of what we're looking at here? Is this a red flag at all, or are we not too concerned about it?
I mean, we're a little worried, right? We'd love to see that still, the efficiency metrics still producing even in a bad offense. But it really is a bad offense. It's a low volume offense, so even the production numbers don't really pop. But going into the season, he was our wide receiver one for a reason. He's still a good player. He's just not being given the chance to shine like these other two receivers who have NFL caliber quarterbacks. Certainly at Ohio State, we expect Sane to go early. Jade Mayavis, someone we're going to talk about later in this video, the USC quarterback. We had talked about Arizona State's quarterback in the offseason, but he is not getting talked about right now for a reason. So I'm okay with it now. I'm a little worried. I'd love to see it go up, but we've seen two receivers kind of join him in that tier, so I think that's showing the concern. But I still love him as a prospect.
All right, so definitely something to keep an eye on. I think what we probably want to do is what David says every offseason. Listen to what the NFL tells us about it, right? Where's that draft? If he's still a early first round draft pick, they tell us they don't have any.
I think he went like number 3 in the NFL Stock Exchange mock they did a couple days ago. 3 overall. So yeah.
And I mean, of course, that is a mock draft, right? If you have to draft before the rookie draft, don't worry, we'll be out there with mock drafts before the rookie drafts galore, or we'll talk about how we're wrong about things. But fortunately, we should have that before most of our rookie draft. Moving on to tier 2 briefly here. David, I'm going to give you the hefty duty of reading the 50% larger tier 2 to us.
Tier 2, starting off here with a few quarterbacks, really a tough debate for who quarterback number 1 is. We got 3 guys in our tier here, but there's probably another 3 to 6 names you could mention, and you wouldn't be completely wrong for feeling that way. First guy we've got here, though, Fernando Mendoza, Indiana's quarterback. I would say most people's favorite for the Heisman right now. I think he's probably quarterback 2, according to most scouts, but he certainly has a shot to be the 101. Big guy, big arm, enough athleticism. Next guy, Dante Moore out of Oregon. Reports last week make it sound like he's coming back. It's just reporting, so we weren't confident enough to pull him out of the tier video like we did with Arch and Sellers, but that certainly seems to be where Moore is trending. And then Ty Simpson, Alabama quarterback. He seems to be the 101 favorite right now, or at least the first quarterback taken in the draft. Certainly if Tennessee has the 101, they shouldn't be taking a quarterback, hopefully. I'll go into this a little bit deeper, but I have some concerns about Ty Simpson. He's a first-year starter with very little experience behind in his first 2 seasons. He's certainly popping on tape. Running back Justice Haynes, Michigan running back. First year there, he is just producing at a very high level. I believe over 100 and at least 1 touchdown in every game but one. A little banged up over the last couple of weeks, but I don't think it's anything major. So he could make a very strong case for RB2. Jonah Coleman, someone else we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about here shortly. Someone whose efficiency metrics last year really popped. Had a great start to the season, but it's kind of been trending down. And then his teammate Denzel Boston, wide receiver, another big, tall outside receiver in this class. We've got several of them. So, hopefully a few of these guys can hit because the NFL sure does love big outside receivers.
Yeah, I really like Michigan's running back, Justice Haynes. Transferred over from Alabama, and he has been incredible this year. He would probably be, if you took his yards per game, he'd probably be the rushing leader if it weren't for the last couple games that he had missed. But regardless, just his stats are ridiculous when you look at his game log. It's unfortunate he's missing a couple of games here, but I don't want us to forget just how awesome that he's been. Like you said, over 100 yards in every game except for one. That was USC, where he actually left in the second quarter. So if you take that game out, then he was on pace to have 100 yards. He had 51 yards in the second quarter. So he's just, the consistency is there. The explosiveness is there. I mean, he's got a run of 59 yards, 75, 75. 75. I mean, he's breaking off big runs consistently. A lot of the scouts that I've listened to talk about him is they say that he does the running back stuff really good, the down to down stuff. I think probably the one hole in his profile is he's not a high end wide receiver. You can see it's at 0.5 yards per route run. That is a concerning number. Through these 7 games he's played, which 6.5 really, he has 13 receptions. So, I mean, he's catching about 2 passes per game, which shows me he's at least decent enough there, but he just hasn't broken one yet. He's averaging 3.8 yards per reception. So maybe it's just because it's a smaller sample. I don't know if they're not using him the correct way. I'm not a scout, but I would like to see a little bit more receiving ability to be more confident in fantasy. But he at least does have that high end rushing ability and also the explosiveness. So that makes me feel really good about him.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. The one concern being the receiving ability. Is it that he can't do it or that they're just not asking him to? That's always the question for me. I do love to see the explosiveness, though. 10 plus yards on 15% of his carries. That's a pretty good number. I'm going to talk for a minute here about Ty Simpson. I'm going to expand on why I'm concerned about his experience. That's something that is kind of a trend in general in the NFL lately. We hear teams saying they want their quarterbacks to be a little more seasoned, to have some more starts under their belt. That way they're making the mistakes and growing without costing them their jobs. Essentially, Ty Simpson is on pace for 526 career pass attempts, assuming Alabama plays in the SEC championship game and 3 playoff games. Technically, they could play a 4th. I just felt like that was a good high-end estimation for him. So I looked at players under 600 passing attempts in their career. This is all first-round quarterbacks from 2016 to 2024. Didn't look at McCarthy or Penix because they barely played their rookie seasons. But we're looking at points per game, NFL points per game versus college career pass attempts. Players with less than 600 college career pass attempts, 14.4 career points per game. Players over that at 17.1. Looking at players with 16 plus career points per game, 0 out of 7. So small sample size. I want to emphasize that. But 0 out of 7 of the players with less than 600 college pass attempts had 16 plus points per game. We had 7 out of 24 with over 600 that hit that, and even 3 that hit over 20 points per game. Another marker I found interesting, under 1,000 college pass attempts, players averaged 13.3 points per game in year 1. Players over that average 15.1 points per game in year 1. So look, this is surface level digging with a small sample size. So I'm not trying to draw major conclusions from this, but to me, it's enough to suggest that experience is important at the quarterback position. I want to dig into this a little more in the offseason, but it's enough for me to raise a red flag about Ty. I will say I hear a lot of scouts say that he appears to be more mature than his experience. They ask him to do more at the line than they normally would of a first-year starter. And so if my concern is his experience, scouts say that he's showing that he can overcome that. I'm certainly not writing Ty Simpson off. He's a potential one-on-one in this class. Just a little bit concerned that he's a 1-year starter. We're talking about like Anthony Richardson, Trey Lance level of pass attempts here. So it's a pretty low bar.
The one thing I will say compared to Anthony Richardson and Trey Lance level of pass attempt is just the situation that he's doing it in. I know it's not Saban there anymore. I still do think Alabama is ran unlike most other programs are, right? I do think that a year of starting there can get you NFL ready. And I don't think you can say that about that many other college atmospheres. But that being said, JP, who's your next guy you've got?
Player that I'm going to highlight here is Denzel Boston. Dane Brugler, he just released his top 50 big board. Denzel Boston is inside the top 25. A lot of mock drafts have him in the first round too. So a first round wide receiver, kind of gotta have him here unless we're really low on him from an analytical perspective. But he is a 4th-year player. He didn't really have much production his first 2 years, but that was 2022 and 2023 in Washington. That's when they had Jalen Polk, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and even Jeremy Bernard, who we're going to talk about here soon. So that he had four players that are going to be all day 1 or 2 picks, probably 4 of them. That's ridiculous. So yeah, I don't really fault him for being the underclassman who didn't perform as a freshman and sophomore in the rare occasion here. But as a junior, he got his first opportunity to really play and shine, and he took advantage of it. 63 receptions for 834 yards last year with 9 touchdowns. This year, he is pacing to pass that. Like I said, 834 receiving yards last year, and then this year's at 730, and they got a few more games left here, so I'm pretty sure he's going to pass that, and he's already got 8 touchdowns, so this guy is a big-time red zone threat. He's 6'4", 209 pounds, and I don't like to see when a guy only lines up outside, but he lines up about 20% in the slot, so I'm seeing enough versatility there that I like. 2.42 yards per route run is a good number. Not elite, not concerning. It's right there where I like to see. And also, what's really interesting is for a guy at 6'4", 209 pounds, he's been a punt returner for Washington too. So you don't usually see guys of that size returning punts, but that shows me that he's got that open field ability. So yeah, I think he's going to be a really good prospect, and I think some dynasty managers are going to fall in love, especially if he gets an enticing landing spot, or he might be 106 in some leagues, and I kind of expect him to be locked into the first round unless something crazy happens.
Yeah, not only does he return punts, but he returned one for a touchdown earlier in the year, which I think that's kind of important to some degree. Not if you don't do it, it's not important if you don't do it, but if you do it, it shows you're pretty good with the ball in your hand. And at 6'4", 209 is what he's listed at. That's pretty darn good. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about his teammate a little bit more here, Jonah Coleman. As I kind of alluded to, last year was much better than this year. Last year over 1,000 yards. It was his first year at Washington. Spent his first years at Arizona. This year he may not hit 1,000 yards. He's not on pace for it, but he's an explosive back who is capable of putting up big games, and all it takes is one to get back on pace for that. But a little concerned with the dip in the efficiency. Last year, 0.35 missed tackles forced per attempt, down to 0.22. Yards per contacts down about 1 from 4.3 to 3.4. Yards of 10 plus, or rushes of 10 plus yards down from 20% to 12. That was all pretty concerning. Nice saving grace, though. Yards per out run up from 0.96 to 1.95. So it goes from like, yeah, he's okay to, hey, this guy might be a weapon out of the backfield. He's really efficient. He's someone I really like to watch this offseason. He's someone who had a really hot start. I still think he's going to be a second round NFL draft pick. I don't love to speculate on this, but looking at the dip in efficiency, looking at the hot start and how quickly it changed, I wonder if maybe he's playing through something they're not telling us. I don't have any information on that. I'm just looking at the data, and it kind of suggests something happened. So I don't know. I'm curious to hear, as the offseason plays out for his process, is there a reason why there's this dip in efficiency? If there's not a reason, it's concerning. If you can explain it to me, I'm a little less concerned because of what I have seen. So he's an interesting prospect, and I sure hope we figure out why and that he's able to get back to what he was last year and at the beginning of this year.
Some interesting players. I am curious if either of you guys, I've heard a lot of speculation for Mendoza potentially being that 101, potentially going to the Jets. Do either of you guys have him as your 101 today?
Yeah, he's mine.
Yeah, I think I'd slightly put him above Ty Simpson because he's got a lot more experience. He's played 3 full years, and he's doing, obviously he's in the Heisman race.
But by 101, I mean the first NFL quarterback taken.
Yeah, of course. We clearly have tier 1 players in Dynasty above the tier 2 players.
That being said, once we solidify top 10 draft capital for some of these quarterbacks, they probably will move up. We're pretty uncertain, so we're not confident enough to put a single one of these guys in tier 1.
Absolutely. And then, of course, Moore would love to see him go in this draft class. 27 is already rich enough, right? Don't need to push anybody else that way. Gonna move on to tier 3 here. JP, gonna ask you to read these guys to us.
Man, am I lucky. I get the small tiers.
But you do have one extra tier to read at the end, JP. Not all roses for you, man.
Yeah, that last tier is a little bit big too. Yeah, so we decided to make this one kind of a small one and not have any wide receivers in here just because we felt Boston kind of separated ahead. But 3 players we have here are running back from Nebraska, Emmett Johnson, kind of a flag plant player here for me and David. We love this guy. And then we got 2 tight ends. We got Michael Trigg of Baylor and Kenyon Sadiq of Oregon, who has all the hype because he is ultra athletic. He's being mocked as a top 20 NFL draft pick. So we'd love to see that capital. Just want to see a little bit more production for a guy that's that talented, right? But the player I'm going to highlight here is the running back, Emmett Johnson. And I think I texted David when they played USC about 2 weeks ago. And I was like, man, I think Emmett Johnson might be my favorite player to watch in this class. It's just he consistently is getting a few extra yards than what's really blocked up for him. He's in the conversation, in my opinion, to be one of the most elusive backs in this class as well. He just cuts really, really quickly. For a guy who's 5'11", 200 pounds, slightly on the smaller end. Going to be very curious what he weighs in at, but he doesn't shy away from contact. I'm really glad to see that for a guy who's a little bit smaller, and he's a really good player at forcing his tackles. I mean, there's a cut up. I retweeted it on my X account. Man, if you watch that, you'll just see there's so many times where like, oh, he's definitely going down. I was like, oh, he is still on his feet. He just has excellent contact balance, and he denies going down. That's what I really, really like, that he's got that dog in him. And his stats, if you look at the Power 4, he is first in rushing yards, and he has 11 touchdowns. Like I said, 200 pounds, a little bit smaller, but he's got 11 rushing touchdowns. That shows me he's still very good in between the tackles. And when you're also looking at the Power 4, he's got the second most receiving yards also. So this is a very well-rounded back. He looks like he could be a player that runs slower at the combine. I don't know for sure. He kind of strikes me as a player who's going to like look faster on the field, but maybe not test as fast. Maybe we'll get a discount like we did on Bucky Irving and Cam Scatabo because of those combine performances. Because I just think this guy, he's got great game speed. He's a really, really good player. And I'm definitely going to be betting on him. He's my RB4 right now. I think he could be my RB3 maybe, but I think other people are definitely undervaluing this guy who's just extremely well-rounded.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect it, but I can see him ending up RB2 even for us. Just going to quickly plug every week, JP and I put together a 2026 draft class standouts, just some college football players who really stood out that are eligible for the 26 class. Emmett joined that list in week 2 or 3, something like that, really early on. It was kind of when he was put on our radar, and he's just been popping every week. You looked at last year, he was behind, I don't remember who, but he was behind someone. So it was an okay year, but a pretty solid year for a backup. And then he's been given the chance to shine this year, and he's just looked great. Over 100 rushing and receiving last week. I know it was JP's turn to talk about Emmett Johnson, but I just want to talk about it a little too, because we're both really falling for this guy. I do think if he tests poorly and he falls in the draft because of it, I do think we're going to still have a lot of Emmett Johnson on our teams. Looking forward to see how the offseason goes. I still do think he could establish himself as a top 50 pick, though. He looks so good on film. I'm going to talk about Michael Trigg, Baylor tight end, a little bit here. He was a two-sport athlete in high school, which at tight end, we love to see that. He was a basketball player, even had several scholarship offers to play basketball in college, not just a high school two-way athlete, but someone who could have been a college two-way athlete had he wanted. Started his career at USC, transferred to Ole Miss, did basically nothing his first 3 years between those schools, transferred to Baylor before the 24 season, not before this season, and he is starting to put together a pretty good career. Currently third in the FBS in targets with 70, but he has one less played game than second and first. First has 72. On a per game basis, he's doing better than those players. Second most receiving yards among FBS tight ends. Also one less game played than first. First is the same guy. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. Tied for first in touchdowns. Third in first downs. Also less games played than first and second there. So super productive. He's got strong hands, great contested catch ability, making highlight reel catches every week, it seems like. I really like the way he plays. I think he's going to be great in contested catch situations. I think he's going to be an every down tight end in the NFL. I think right now he is my tight end one. Not quite the athlete Sadiq is, but his production is just on another level than Sadiq right now.
Also has 16 missed tackles forced. So he's really, really good at breaking tackles, which kind of reminds us of the guys like Trey McBride and Tucker Kraft. Those guys can really pop.
And then Sadiq, the other guy, tight end, in the same tier as him. So David's already kind of established, has Trigg slightly ahead of Sadiq for tight end one class. JP, if you have to pick between these guys for tight end one today, which guy are you picking?
Honestly, based on what I'm seeing from Tyler Warren right off the jump in the NFL, I kind of think I will go with the more pro ready guy that we've seen produce at a high level. So it is close, and a lot of people have Michael Trigg really low, which I think is going to be wrong when you see how good of a receiver he is. It's just we can't ignore that Sadiq's getting a lot of like top 20 buzz. Very young, a lot of upside, but we've heard this before at tight end, and it doesn't always work out. So I'll take Trigg right now, who's proven it right now.
Yeah, 20 years old is crazy. So moving on from a tier 3, David, take a sip of water real quick. We're going to be moving on to tier 4, which David's going to have to practically spend 6 or 7 minutes reading it alone. So David, can you go ahead and tell us who is in tier 4?
Yeah, it might be easier to say who's not in tier 4. We really pushed the limits of this graphic, and it's just, look, at this point in the process, there's so many guys that could go up or down. We felt like nobody really stood out from this group, but there's a lot of guys that we really like in here. There's some high-end guys that really struggled this season. And to start off the list of people that struggled this season, quarterback Drew Aller out of Penn State. He's someone who had some top 10 buzz if he would have come out last year. He's someone who people have thought very highly of his whole career. But honestly, he's never really put it together for a full season. This year, he was playing during most of the Penn State collapse, but he did get hurt. I believe there's a chance he could end up with a medical red shirt. I'm not positive on that. So there's a chance he comes back, but I don't know. It feels like it's time for him to go to the NFL. So I think that'll happen. If it happens, he could end up with day 2 draft capital, which means he's worth taking a flyer on. Kind of the same thing with Nussmeier, but less confidence. He got benched last week even, struggling so bad. He was a lot of people's quarterback one going into the year. He has just not shown it. I kind of don't think he's going to be anything for our Dynasty rosters. But if he gets the draft capital, we got to listen. Next player, running back Jadarian Price, the backup to Jeremiah Love. But look, he's a good player. If he was somewhere else, he'd be thriving. You look at the efficiency metrics, 0.2 missed tackles forced per attempt, 3.7 yards after contact per attempt, and 22% of his rushes go for 10 or more yards. That's the highest number in this class. So explosive runner. Next player, Nicholas Singleton, someone else we can put it in the struggle bus category. We thought he could have been a part of the top tiers of running backs last year. Last year's good running back class. He has just fallen off the cliff. I don't know if he's playing through something or if it's part of the Penn State collapse or if he's just not very good at football. He's shown a lot, so I think he's got a shot to get decent draft capital and move up the ranks. He looked very good last week, but he's got to answer for this bad season he's putting on tape. That's for sure. Next player, Hollywood Smothers, someone I'm not going to talk about much right now because I'm going to talk about him a little more in depth once we get to that section. Penn State running back, Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton's running mate. Was his backup the first 2 years. This year's kind of switched. Allen seems to be the main guy there. His metrics look a lot better. He's not going to be much of a receiving guy, but he could be an early down bruiser. Definitely a good player. Next guy, Chris Bell, someone I think most people would have a little bit higher. I've heard some A.J. Brown comps. Just saying, I've heard the comp. I think our main concern, JP and I have, he lines up almost exclusively right side off the line of scrimmage from what we've seen. That's not 100%, but it's enough that it's a red flag. Hopefully he is versatile, and that's just how Louisville wants to use him. Next receiver, Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama. He's putting together a very good season. There were several weeks where he's outplayed Ryan Williams, who is one of the 2027 class studs. Next players, both wide receivers out of Indiana. Both players JP and I will talk about shortly. Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper. So I guess JP, I just talked for quite a while reading all these names. You want to start with one of your receivers?
Yeah, and before I do, Chris Bell, he could rise up into the first round in the NFL draft. If he does, I'll bump him up for sure, but I'm still going to be lower on him. I watched every single one of his receptions, and I just was not seeing a whole lot of separation, on top of what you said with the alignment being very, very stagnant. Very, very good athlete. We've seen very good athletes at wide receiver not be good in the NFL if they're not refined. But I'll go ahead and start with Alabama wide receiver Jeremy Bernard, who I mentioned. I don't know if you remember. I mentioned him when I was talking about Denzel Boston. He was the fourth wide receiver there with on Washington when Adunze, McMillan, and Polk were all there, and he filled in when McMillan got hurt that year. And like you said, he has outplayed Ryan Williams at times, who he was ranked as a top 5 receiver coming back into college football this year by a lot of people. Just a really, really great player. But Jeremy Bernard, he looked like the first read for Ty Simpson off. I watched every single one of his receptions as well. I don't see a whole lot of work versus rest, but off-man coverage, zone coverage, he separates really well. Is urgent as a route runner. They even give him a lot of carries. You see a couple of carries every game. That makes me think they really like the ball in his hands, what he can do in space. He's really reliable hands too. I don't see him dropping a whole lot. And I just think he's going to be one of these guys that is a really refined route runner, very smart. He's a leader as well. My concern is just for a guy who's 6'1", 204, I don't see as much physicality as I want to see. Like I said, I haven't seen a whole lot of snaps of him playing press coverage. So maybe he can develop that. We've seen that with JSN. We didn't see a whole lot of snaps and he developed there. So it is possible, but he's kind of that perfect size at 6'1", 204. I put out a tweet just a few days ago about how the wide receivers in the NFL, a lot of the top 5 best receivers in the league, they're right at that size, 6 foot, 6'1", 200 pounds. You see that with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice, Malik Neighbors. That's kind of the size receiver I think is optimal for physicality, route running, and athleticism a lot of times. But we'll see where his draft capital is. But I've seen a lot of scouts say he's wide receiver 6, 7 in this class, even some at wide receiver 5. I think he's probably a round 2 pick, could rise up a little bit. So I don't think I see him falling outside of round 2, but I think he's just going to be a darn good player. Might have slightly limited upside though.
Yeah, he certainly looks the part out there when you watch him. A little worried about the yards per out run being under 2. That is a bit of a red flag for me. But I will say Alabama does like to spread the ball around. They always have, even, coach change. It doesn't really affect that. It doesn't seem. They've just got a lot of talent. So, I'm willing to give them a little bit of a pass. It's almost like Ohio State receivers where you kind of got to dig in a little bit deeper if you don't see the numbers you like to see. You just know there's a bunch of mouths to feed there. Definitely a good player, though. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Elijah Surratt, Indiana wide receiver. It's his second year at Indiana. His third year with Coach Cignetti. Went from James Madison to Indiana with Cignetti. Could eclipse 3,500 career receiving yards and 40 touchdowns as early as next week. He's got 39 touchdowns and 30-ish, I believe, career receiving yards. Definitely some big numbers. Shows production throughout his career. Now, it has been at various levels, but every level he's been at, he has produced. So he is just a productive wide receiver. Also a chain mover. 15% of his routes run, he gets a first down on. Just for reference, Marv's final year, that was 14%. Neighbors' final year was 16. So right in between those two, he's had 4 different games with 7 receiving receiving first downs. That'd be insane if it was touchdowns. Also had 3 games with double-digit targets. His toughest competition this year, he shined against Oregon, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 7 first downs, 121 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's currently day-to-day with a hamstring, so if you tune in this week, you might not see him, but he's been a very good player all year. It doesn't sound serious about the hamstring, so I would expect him to be back for the playoff run that Indiana will go on. If he lights it up on that run, he could rise up the ranks pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, the other Indiana wide receiver, honestly, I could see him rise a lot too. This is a really fun tier, honestly. We're going to see how it plays out. But Omar Cooper, looking at his PFF receiving grade, these are the players that he's behind this draft class. Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, and Denzel Boston. Literally just the top 4 wide receivers. He's the next guy in receiving grade. I had put out a tweet before, it was during the game last week because he had an insane catch. If you haven't seen his catch last week against Penn State, oh my gosh, you have to go watch it. Incredible catch where he high points the ball, displaying just the high pointing ability he has with the ball skills. Amazing. One of the best catches I've seen. But in that tweet, I put out that of Power 4 college players this season with 2.8 plus yards per route run, which he dipped a little bit below that after this game, and with 15 plus missed tackles forced, is only Mekhi Lemon, Mario Craver, and Omar Cooper. He's one of only 3 players. So what I'm seeing is a guy who is going to be an early declare. He has, from what I've seen, really good ball skills. He's a missed tackles forced threat as well, and he's been graded high by PFF. But the one thing that is a concern is the slot rate right there. Almost 85% slot percentage. Is he going to be versatile enough to get into 2 wide receiver sets? Because he's checking a whole lot of boxes for me. If he just played more outside, I probably would have, vied for him to be up a tier. But so we're going to see about that.
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling he'll be able to move around a bit in the NFL. I kind of wonder the same about Surratt, and I think it's maybe just a product of Indiana's offense. They've got Surratt outside. They don't need to mess with it. Cooper thrives inside. They don't need to mess with it. So I definitely agree it's a concern, but I like both of those players a lot. Other guy I want to talk about here in this tier actually might be my favorite player. If not Emmett Johnson, it's going to be Hollywood Smothers, running back, NC State. He earns the nickname Hollywood. He does. He is a big play machine. He is a ton of fun to watch. Efficiency metrics between good and great. Missed tackles forced over 3. You love to see it. Over 4 yards per contact after attempt. Also very high in number. 0.18, 10 plus yard attempt or rushes per attempt. Very high number. 1.2 yards per outrun. Above average. Maybe not great, but still very good. Kind of a tale of 2 seasons for him as well. First 5 weeks, 19.2 carries per game, but only 8 carries per game over the last 3. He was listed as a game time decision, so kind of think he's playing through something right now. Going to lean on the first 5 games for him. And even with the last 3 weeks being a little bit of a struggle, he leads the ACC in rushing yards, and his 6.9 yards per carry would be a school record if he keeps it up. Second among FBS running backs, 28 receptions, 4th in targets, 6th in receiving yards. So the yards per out run, like I said, good, not great, but he is a good receiving back. I do kind of worry at his size. Is he going to be able to stay healthy in the NFL? But in the first 5 weeks, he's averaging 23 touches per game. So I kind of think maybe he'll need a David Montgomery to his Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm not saying he's Jahmyr Gibbs, but that kind of player, the highly efficient player on his touches, but somebody else gets to take the beating in between the tackles. But yeah, man, if this guy declares, I think he could get some early draft capital. If he gets to a really creative offense, I think wheels up on Hollywood Smothers for me.
Yeah, it's a very large tier. Curious about just Singleton and Allen here. Shades of Ollie Gordon is a name that came to mind from last year's draft class as a guy who, was a potential tier 1 rookie running back going into the season. And then we see a down year, and then we see just the bottom kind of fall out as far as draft capital and all of that. How concerned are we about these guys? Are they guys? I mean, you guys play Devy. Where do you value them in Devy right now? Is it a mid-second-ish, something like that? Just kind of to put a frame of reference on where these guys have fallen to?
Somewhere close to there, maybe a late second for me. I mean, Nick Singleton, you nailed it. It is a lot like Ollie Gordon. I mean, very hyped and then just has a terrible season. The difference for me, I don't want to just completely ignore him, is the athleticism, man. When he goes to the combine, he's gonna be the talk of the town, in my opinion. That's gonna be his week. And then he's also he's an above average receiver as well. So if he goes to the right system where they get him in space as a receiver and the right scheme for him, yeah, I mean, he could ascend a lot, but also his floor is 0 because the running back stuff, I think it's just not there in certain aspects. And Katron Allen, I think he just does the running back stuff better. I mean, if you look at their stats, I mean, Katron was kind of taken over there for a while, and they've been flip flopping a little bit. It's just Katron, man. I don't know if he has like top 12 upside unless he's getting a ton of touchdowns, because he's not, he's not a zero as a wide receiver, but he's not a good receiving back in my opinion.
And then last guy here, just looking at Jadarian Price in here, and you were talking about being buried behind another guy, kind of shades of Roshan Johnson to me, just is what that brings up in memory. I guess just like I want to posit the question in today's NIL era, why would somebody stay there? Like, is there? I just, me, it's a red flag that I kind of want to avoid. Like Roshan Johnson's never done anything in the pros, right? He's always been a name. It's had opportunities. He's gotten his chances, and he's never done anything with them. Like, why would this be any different? I guess.
I mean, I don't have any good examples to pull off the top of my head, but there have been plenty of 1Bs that have gone on to succeed, right? Especially when the guy you're behind is Jeremiah Love. I get what you're saying about Roshan, but they're different players. Jadarian Price has. Let me pull up his numbers real quick. I don't want to speak out of my ass. I'm pretty sure he's played a decent amount.
And while he's kind of looking that up, just one last thing I want to touch on is just Garrett Nussmeier. JP, are we pretty much out on this guy at this point? Like, is he here because we don't feel like we can drop him further, or do you think he has a chance of redeeming himself at all?
I mean, last year he had like a near elite season. He was in the Heisman like talking conversation. It was really good. There's talks that he's playing through an injury this year. They said that he might get shut down for the year with this oblique injury. And so that's kind of what I'm holding on to, is maybe the medical shows this, maybe the Steelers or the Rams take him in round 2, and then we're going to be really interested in that scenario, because I think he does a lot of the quarterback things well, just from what I hear from scouts. But yeah, his absolutely he's the one that could drop out of here. And with Drew Aller, kind of like the Will Levis thing, he has the tools, so he might just go round 2 because the tools and somebody thinks that they can fix him.
Yeah, and with Price, he did have almost 750 rushing yards last year, almost exactly 7 touchdowns. This year, just under 600 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns. I don't think Roshan ever broke 600 yards. Jadarian's about to do it twice in 3 years. So the production's a little higher. And if I'm being honest, I would expect him to come back and be featured for a year and grow his stock. But I've heard some people talk about him as RB3, 4 in this class. So if he gets a good enough grade, especially for running backs, the younger you get in the NFL, the younger you get to your second contract, the more confidence there is in giving you that second contract. I'm kind of 50-50 on him, whether he's coming out or, going to go back. But I wouldn't be too worried that he was behind the best running back in the country.
No, makes sense. And moving on from tier 4 to tier 5. JP David's read, if you look at here, tier 2, tier 4, a lot more names than you so far. So it's only fair. I'm going to have to make you read tier 5 for our dear listeners.
We try to be fair. Now, we have one quarterback here in Jaden Mayava of USC. He's had a really good year, so he could be a potential riser, could be a 0. We'll have to see. Darius Taylor of Minnesota, running back. He had an incredible freshman year. He has struggled with injuries. That's kind of been his biggest red flag. But if you look at his yards per out run, 1.74, he's a really good receiver, and he's done some good stuff as a running back. We'll see about the medical stuff with him. LJ Martin of BYU has been a big riser. He was top 5 in this class in rushing yards. He has an injury now, so he's fallen down a little bit. But at 6'2", 220 pounds, I think there's going to be people around the NFL that love him. And I've heard it was Todd McShay said he had a lot of scouts say that they love this kid. So that's very interesting to me. Eli Stowers, I kind of thought we might have put him in tier 4 actually, but he's been rising a lot. 2.8 yards per out run at tight end. Almost 3 is really, really high. That's got shades of like where I think Loveland and Tyler Warren were last year. So he is a high upside tight end as a receiver. Chris Brazzell of Tennessee. Some people have him really, really high. He's 6'5", a big wide receiver, and he's got strong production. I could see him going early round 2, but man, the track record on Tennessee wide receivers has been rough. We got Duke wide receiver Cooper. David, we talked about the last name, but I want to say it's Barkate. I'm not exactly sure. His production has been really, really strong this year for a guy that was relatively unknown by us coming into the year. Got Casey Conception of Texas A&M wide receiver, had a breakout as a freshman and has been really good this year. And Antonio Williams of Clemson wide receiver, who I'll go ahead and I'll just talk about him. He had a breakout as a freshman. Now, when I say breakout, I'm talking more from like a Devy perspective. When you see a freshman wide receiver get like 500 plus yards, that's really good for a freshman, especially for a guy who wasn't even like a 5-star player. Unfortunately, he has had struggles with injuries, but man, I hear a lot of people say he's just a really good route runner. He's 21, probably going to turn 22 soon because he is a second-year player. He's also been a return player as well, so I think that he's going to be a player that's going to be athletic, a good route runner, and people are going to appreciate that he broke out early. I think he's a smart, savvy player. He's going to be really good against zone coverage as well. We'll have to see how much he rises. He has an opportunity here now that he's returned because he hurt his hamstring week 1. They settled him in a little bit, and recently he's had some really, really big games. So honestly, he could gain a lot of steam and climb up into like the round 2 of the NFL draft. We'll have to see, but he's been a player that I really liked a lot.
Yeah, and I guess I will start by diving into Eli Stowers, player you thought we might have put in tier 4. I think we talked about it a little bit, and honestly, maybe he does belong there. I think he has a legit shot at being tight end 1 in this class. We're not quite where we are with Trig and Sadiq, but it's really not far. The gap is not that big. Stowers a little undersized at 235. Hopefully he weighs in a little bit above that. That would make me very happy. But if you'll remember when I was talking about Trig, said he was like second or third in all these categories. Well, Eli Stowers is pretty much the guy that was first in those. First in yards among tight ends, targets, yards per out run, receiving first downs. He has 0.14 first downs per route run. If you'll remember, that's how Marv ended his final season. So that is a very high number. In his career, he's got over 1,600 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. I saw a chart on Twitter I kind of wanted to highlight, and career EPA versus career yards per out run among tight ends. And, you know, when you see these graphs and there's the one guy in the top right, that's Eli Stowers. There's nobody near him. I mean, there's some other tight ends that kind of pop on the chart, but Stowers is the guy that kind of breaks the chart. So he's just had a very good, very productive career at Vanderbilt. Like I said, at 235, it's just on the low side of like, okay, I'm a little worried about what he's going to weigh in at. Just give me a good size and finish the season strong. I do think he has got a shot to be tight end 1.
Yeah, I think we probably should bump him up to tier 4, honestly, because even if he was a little bit smaller, I think that if a team invests into him, that they're probably going to use him a lot as a wide receiver, which we'll like to see, but also see what that snap count could, fluctuate with that at times. But the player that I'm going to talk about here after Antonio Williams is another wide receiver, Casey Conception. He's really been impressing me lately, and on a lot of NFL big boards, I've been seeing him as like wide receiver 6 or 7. So I thought I really needed to give him a shout out because I think he is rising a lot. He's on a team that is they're ranked 3rd. I think they kept Indiana at 2nd, and he's got another player across from him, Mario Craver, who is a 2027 guy. Shocker, we got another high-end 2027 guy that just kind of popped up here. But despite having a really good teammate on the other side of him, he has been very productive as well. He's at 5'11", 190 pounds, so I think his size, it's good. It's close to that 6'2" 200 mark. Not elite, but I think it's good enough. And the slot percentage, I remember when he was a freshman, that was kind of the concern, was he was a high slot guy. But now at 33% slot rate, that is really, really impressive to me because he's transitioned to the outside and he's winning with a 2.62 yards per route run. That is a very good mark as well. So I think with the athleticism that he has, the early breakout, the size, and then the production, he really could be a riser. And I've seen other people talk about him also as a route runner. I just saw a cut up. I can't remember who posted it on X, but he was separating quite a lot. So I think that he could be a player that rises in the NFL draft process.
Yeah, he was a Devy darling after his freshman year. I think people that play Devy still have him pretty high in their 2026 class tiers. I think it's for a good reason. Numbers aren't eye-popping at this point, but early career production, good competition, that, potential high-end draft pick on the other side of him. I like what I see. I think he's a good person to highlight here. I'm going to highlight another receiver, guy whose last name JP struggles to say, so it doesn't help me. I think it's Cooper Barcati. It might be Barcate. For now, I guess let's call him Cooper Bugatti. Why not? Look, he's a 4th-year player, spent his first 3 years at Harvard. A little concerning, but he was a massive producer there. And then he upgrades his production this year playing at Duke, and he's still just producing. He's maintaining it, if not exceeding it. Last 3 weeks, 29 targets, 24 catches, 349 yards, and a touchdown. He's a weapon over the middle and intermediate areas, intermediate routes, all over 6 yards per route run, left, center, right side of the field, doesn't matter. Also thrives in the short middle. So I think he's going to be a pretty good weapon at the next level. Given those numbers, I was kind of surprised to see almost an 85% outside player, but he does thrive in the middle of the field. 2.9 yards per out run, we like that. 6.2 yak per reception, one of the higher numbers we saw in this group. So does a lot of things we like. 1 year production at a high level of competition, but he's been productive his whole career. So someone I think is going to rise up some ranks here.
And I mean, probably a smart guy too. given all that education, right?
He has his degree from Harvard in 3 years. So yeah, I'd say so.
Woo! No, just what you were talking about with Dowers, is it pronounced? That those numbers that he has there, probably a smaller tight end. I think that matters less and less in this modern day NFL. If it just takes one team to fall in love with him, give him round 2 draft capital, put him in a role where he can be productive, or him to be a late first, early second in Superflex tight end premium rookie draft. So definitely love that. A lot of interesting names in this tier. And we have some honorable mentions we want to throw out to our listeners as well. I'm going to go ahead and read those out and then ask you guys to both talk about a few since y'all have talked a lot this podcast. So honorable mentions, we have John Mateer, Oklahoma QB, other QBs, Brendan Sorsby, Cincinnati, Darian Mensa, Duke, and Marcel Reed, Texas A&M. Honorable mention RBs, Jeremiah Cobb from Auburn, Waymond Jordan from USC, Desmond Demond Claiborne from Wake Forest, and Bryson Washington from Baylor. Wide receiver mentions Eric McAllister, TCU, Deuce Robinson, Florida State, Chase Brown, Kansas State, Amari Thomas, Houston, Eric Singleton, Auburn, and tight ends Max Clare, OSU, Hanner Koziol, pronunciation, Houston, and Joe Royer from Cincinnati. So David first, then JP. Gonna ask both of you guys to give me honorable mentions.
Just I'll throw out a couple that I wanted to highlight from this page here. Brendan Sorsby, Cincinnati quarterback, starting to get some buzz. Big player with a big arm and some athleticism. A little bit of concerns with his accuracy, but they pushed the ball downfield at Cincinnati, so that kind of explains it. Also wanted to mention Waymond Jordan, USC running back. He was on track to be probably well into tier 4, comfortably in there for us, dealing with some injuries though. Very high efficiency metrics. Unfortunately, the guy who's filling in for him also looks great. So even when Jordan gets healthy, he might not be able to showcase what we were hoping, but someone I think could be a nice sleeper for us.
Yeah, no, these honorable mentions, there's a couple of guys that really, really could climb. There's still some of the college football season to be played. But John Mateer, I mean, he had first round buzz before his injury, and he's a good athlete. He would be kind of that Konami code rushing quarterback. And also, he's got pretty good arm talent as well. So I don't know. There seems to be a lot of talk about how he's probably going to come back now, unfortunately. So we'll have to see about that. But if he does declare, he's going to be very interesting for fantasy. Jeremiah Cobb, I mean, it wasn't really on my radar all that much, but he's really popped now. And when you look at his rushing production, he's only behind Jeremiah Love and Emmett Johnson in the P4 in this class. So been a very productive back here for Auburn, and he's also a pretty good pass catcher. Jace Brown, he's somebody that I had highlighted on X because his yards per route run, he's at 2.72 or 2.73, and he's a really, really fast player as well, explosive, and he's not talked about a whole lot. So I'm like, okay, well, this passing offense, it hasn't been fantastic, but on a per route basis, he's really been popping. And Tanner Koziel, he's kind of been a favorite of mine. He's been playing with Connor Wegman in Houston, tight end. He's a tall, lanky guy. He's like 6'6", and dude, he's winning like every single contested catch opportunity. I don't know if he's going to be quite the missed tackles force guy. He doesn't have a whole lot, but as a red zone threat, oh my lord, this guy, I think he's going to get a lot of touchdowns in the NFL.
Yeah, and another tight end I want to mention real quick, Max Clare at Ohio State. He was a lot of people's tight end 1 going into the season, very athletic, had some good early career production at Purdue before transferring. Just hasn't really had an opportunity this year in Ohio State's offense. Man, these receivers are kind of all a pretty good group. I just want to talk about Eric McAllister a little bit. He's another big athletic TCU wide receiver. I haven't watched him play enough to know if he's another one in the same mold of the same guys that we're going to have to worry about, or if he can actually play the receiver position. But his numbers really pop, and he has really good size and athleticism. So if he can put it all together, I think his name could really rise up the list too.
I was curious here while you were talking about the contested catches for Tanner Koziel. The second highest player in the P4 at tight end for most amount of contested catch wins is 6 with Terrence Carter. Tanner Koziel has 15 that he has won. So, yeah, he really dominates in that area.
And tight end is a position you don't mind if they're that contested catch guy because let's go get it down in the red zone. Let's be that guy that can be on that play action rollout against a cornerback, right? Or a linebacker, whatever, a smaller kid and bully over him. So don't mind seeing that at tight end, like David was talking about it being a potential red flag at the wide receiver position. So a lot of names, a lot of players. If you feel like we missed anyone, please let us know in the comments below. If you disagree, please let us know why you would have somebody higher or lower in the comments below as well. Would love to learn from you, right? We do this for fun. and so that we can learn. We would love to learn from you. So please educate us if you think we're wrong. So that being said, thank you from all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or review. Also, reply to that community question about our 27 class episode next week in the comments below on the YouTube video. And from all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast, until next time.